y'all. I'm in the streets. But what's going to precede this is going to be a reading of a contract of the Belmont Plantation. The Belmont Plantation is in the state of Florida, and this is the year 1867. I want to give a special thanks to our brother WANAGHI, who shares his genealogy, his ancestry with us. And just yesterday, he shared this contract, and I'm going to attempt to read it. A reading of the contract of the Belmont Plantation. There are places where I will say that a word or words unsure of. This means that I was unable to translate the word either because I did not understand what I was reading or I just could not make out the letters. Otherwise, there may be some minor errors in my translation. However, this should not compromise the understanding of the contract. And now the reading. The state of Florida, Jefferson County. This indentured and then underscored the name unsure of, that we, the undersigned for the persons of color, have on this 18th day of January, 1867, bound ourselves to serve as laborers for this year in the service of Robert Gamble, Jr., on the plantation known as Belmont. We bind ourselves individually and collectively to faithfully and industriously serve the said R. Gamble, obeying all lawful commands, preserving and protecting all the goods and property of said Gamble to the best of our ability and as a word unsure of. We bind ourselves to obey all proper orders given by his agents, white or colored, as though given by himself. We bind ourselves to do our proportion of all farming which the said R. Gamble shall deem necessary on the plantation, to do our proportion of all work which may be deemed necessary by him, to put and keep the quarters in good order and preservation, to do our proportion in creating corn houses for storing the crops, and bins for our seed cotton, and putting the stable in good order. We bind ourselves to do our proportions of all wagoning done for the benefit of the plantation, and when handing off the crops, should there be any return loads to come from the depot, it is to be brought by the return wagons. Whenever the said Gamble has any interest in it. If, when carrying on the year's work, the said Gamble has to send to the depot for meat, corn, or anything for the plantation, we bind ourselves to do our proportion of such labor. We agree to render time obedience to the orders of our foreman, doing all work necessary in preparing for cultivating or gathering the crop in the manner and time they may require. We agree to take the utmost care of the teams and tools entrusted to us. We agree to attend faithfully to their feeding, watering, and carrying, and everything necessary to their well-being, as well on rest days as on others. And we agree to report to said our gamble anyone we see or hear as abusing or neglecting any of the team of the said our gamble, whether in our company or in any other. We agree that if any of his team is injured or dies by our neglect or bad treatment, that we are to indemnify said gamble for such loss. We agree to do our proportion of all plantation work, and that the said gamble shall have the privilege of sending word unsure of teams and word unsure of whenever and wherever he may see fit, in positioning the intent of the plantation or enabling him to pass from point to point. We who are parents or have the control of minors who are laborers on the plantation bind ourselves to confine the children and service such minors. We agree that if any full hand shall for any causes other than sickness be absent from work on the plantation, he or she shall forfeit $1, if on the place of sickness 50 cents for each day then lost to the labor of the year, and in proportional amount to every inferior hand so offending, which penalties will form a fund to be divided between the contracting parties. And we agree that if any neglect of the above duties or failure to comply with the above pledges, the said our gamble has the right to dismiss the party so offending with word unsure of. Further of, here is where we see a line drawn through the previous wording, reading on, so much of what may be due him. And then about 4 or 5 words unsure of. Reading on, may at his option put another in his or her place. On his part, the said Robert Gamble Jr. binds himself to furnish the land for cultivation, to furnish and feed 1 mule for every 2 full hands, to furnish all the necessary tools bearing half the expense of repairing all tools, and to allow the laborers 1/2 of all crops made on the plantation, reserving 1/3 of the cane for seed. The said gamble to determine land which is to be planted in any crop, and the quantity of each crop to be cultivated by each hand. And now we will see the names of the people of color serving in the Casey Kennedy's company, witnessed by Anthony Cole, A little further reading. As to paying expenditures, R. Gamble Jr. binds himself to do what Mr. Thomas does in that particular. It is alleged that Mr. Thomas agrees to pay all blacksmithing bills. You also see right above that Mr. Robert Gamble Jr.'s signature. On the next page, it will have the Anthony Coles Company, which should also be people of color. These are, in both cases, men and women. I am not sure of the ages. I don't see ages. Here we have a little more reading that says, all differences arising in account of this contract not word unsure of settled, mutually settled, shall be submitted to a board of word unsure of I'll pick up where I can. Something about a vehicle, I think, citizens and the agent of the BR, not sure, when decisions shall be final by orders of Colonel J.T. Springer, maybe. And then there's a few witnesses for Anthony Cole and Casey Kennedy. This will end my reading of the contract of the Belmont Plantation.